today's talk is in fact a part of my ongoing PhD work, which studies William Blake's eliminated works, which adopts a multimodal analysis of these eliminated works. And by multimodal, I mean that I'm not just interested in the words and the themes they invoke, but I also I am interested in the sound, the meter of the poems, the rhyme, the painting, and the colors. So I see that, and of course, William Blake's eliminated works are a multimodal work in a sense, which integrates different modes of representation and integrates different and suggests different meanings through different modes. So I guess I need Ines to share my presentation. Thank you so much, Ines. So yeah, thank you. So the title of my presentation, of my talk, is Symmetry, Asymmetry in Blake's Companion Poems. Of course, symmetry has been the site of investigation of many Blakean scholars. To name but few is Northrop Frye's groundbreaking book, Fearful Symmetry, and Roman Jacobson's article, The Verbal Art of William Blake and Other Poets, Artists, in which he investigates the infant sorrow, the symmetrical features of infant sorrow. And in today's talk, I try to shed light on another perspective from which Blake's companion poems can be studied. So to be frank, in my PhD, I bring to bear in the analysis 3 companion poems, that is 3 pairs of poems, which are Infant Joy and Infant Sorrow, Nurse's Song of Innocence and Nurse's Song of Experience, and of course, the Lamb and the Tyger. Because today it's half talk and half discussion, I will be very happy later to discuss the other poems, the other companion poems. Because now for today, I will just focus on the 2 poems, the 2 companion poems, The Lamb and the Tyger. Okay, and by companion poems, I mean that all those poems which have the same title, but one of them is situated in the Songs of Innocence and the other in the Songs of Experience, such as Introduction, Nurse's Song, Chimney Sweeper, Holy Thursday, with one of them in Songs of Innocence and the other in the Songs of Experience, but also those poems which don't have the same title, but they show this contrary states of the human soul, as Blake announces it in his frontispiece of Songs of Innocence and Experience. These contrary states of the human soul can be seen in the companion poems such as The Lamb and the Tyger, but also in Infant Joy and Infant Sorrow. So these poems. Next slide, please. Ines? Thank you. So before starting to speak about symmetry, asymmetry, I'd like to present a small and quick definition of how scholars define symmetry. Harold Bloom, for example, defines it as 1-to-1 ratio, whether on opposite sides of a dividing line or in relation to a center. Spence and Aneko also define or see symmetry as the existence of opposing parts. These opposing parts, they produce ideas such as good and evil, poor and rich, war and peace, light and darkness, where seemingly opposing concepts are balanced there is symmetry and consequently harmony. And this very idea is at the crux of Blake's system of dualities, which he created. This system includes, of course, innocence and experience, heaven and hell, rich and poor, all these dualities on which Blake's system is based and which creates this symmetrical feature of Blake's illuminated works. What I will focus on today is to try to shed light, what I did in my PhD, and today I will present, is to try to shed light on another perspective from which this symmetrical paradigm of Blake's works has another facet, which is asymmetry. I will try to see whether this one-to-one ratio, to use Bloom's words, is not respected in the poem itself, and in the relation of the poem to its corresponding illustration, and in the relation between the poem and its companion, in innocence, and its companion in experience. I also try to shed light on those features where there is an item in one part, in one song, which fails to find its counterpart in the other, which breaks this symmetrical feature of Blake's works, of Blake's companion poems exactly. So yeah, Ines, next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, this is it. These are the two poems under investigation today, which are The Lamb and the Tiger. And the first thing we may see when these two poems are put side to side is that Blake opted for the same colors in The Lamb and in the Tiger. And this in itself, I see that it breaks this symmetrical vision of the word, where normally these two poems are supposed to show two contrary states of the human soul. So Blake didn't opt in the Tiger for darker colors, and he opted for the same colors which are used in the Lamb, which are yellow, green, blue, and pink. Relying on Charlotte's Dictionary of Symbols and Jean Chevalier et al. Dictionary of Symbols too, these dictionaries and even in general, yellow is very symbolic of magical properties and of mystery too. Green is the color of life. For Charlotte, is also the color of fertility. Blue is the color of eternity, and it's the color of calmness, and we see it mainly here at the top of, at the back of the Tiger and below it. And mainly we see that Blake opted for pink at the background of the Tiger, and pink is a color that expresses sensuality and emotion. As it is a light red hue, it's a light hue between red and white. So pink takes its meanings from the passion of the red and the purity of the white. And pink becomes symbolic of softness and innocence. And this brings in the idea of asymmetrical features as far as the choice of colors are made by Blake. And this is not just in this copy, which is copy W. For in other copies, for instance, such as copy Z, Blake opted also for blue and yellow at the background, which are colors of calmness and purity. In copy, for example, in copy E, the title and the background are in light green. In copy Z, there is the major colors are blue and yellow. In copy L, it's also yellow and pink. So Blake opted for very calm colors, which breaks, as I said, these symmetrical notions we have about the title and the theme of the poem and the colors Blake opted for. Another symmetrical feature we may notice is that while while the title of the lamb, it invokes one single animal. At the bottom, we see a herd of animals. We see lambs, not the lamb, as opposed to the tiger. And this may be explained with reference to maybe to Blake's idea that the lamb, as it is a sign of inherent beauty and innocence and purity in humans, and as opposed to the tiger, which is a sign of ferocity, that is through the expression, the ferocity of the tiger is shown through expressions such as burning bright and nouns such as fire, dread, furnace, terrors. So here, the tiger may become the incarnation of fear, and maybe Blake wanted to argue for the idea that the kindness in people is the rule. The majority of people are kind, such as the herd of the lambs, and it's the threatening presence of other people is unique. For example, it's not the majority of people who have this threatening presence in one's lives. So yeah, another asymmetrical feature may be noticed, and this was referred to by many other scholars, is that opposed to the tiger, which is a poem that is supposed to create fear and threat, the image of the tiger is more or less like the tiger here appears as a domesticated animal, and some scholars see that he is even dull and silly, as opposed to what he is supposed to present. Next slide, please, Ines. This is something that Makdisi referred to, Sari Makdisi referred to, is that the first thing we notice about the plate is that for all the famously repeated references to fearful symmetry, the tiger has asymmetrical features. It doesn't show the threat it is supposed to show. Okay, thank you. Then next slide. Another feature that may mark Blake's asymmetrical paradigm can be seen in the form of the two poems. So the Lamb is a poem that is composed of two descents, that is, two stanzas of 10 lines, while the Tiger is composed of 6 quatrains, and this creates an asymmetry between the two poems that are supposed to be facing each other. There is an asymmetry in the number of the stanzas. Also, what we notice is that the second stanza in the Lamb answers the questions asked in the first stanza. Okay, while in the Tiger, there are repeated questions. For example, for the question, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry, we are not given any clue, but there are more questions to be asked. What distant deeps or skies burn the fire of thine eyes, or what wings dare he spire, what the hand there sees the fire. So it is as if the idea of power relations is suggested here, how a lamb, which is supposed to be a weak animal, can answer, the poem can answer its own questions, while the poem that is supposed to be about a strong and threatening and fearful animal fails to answer its questions. And this poem starts and ends in questions, as if it were in a vicious circle in which the tiger itself is caught. Another asymmetrical feature that may be noticed in the Lamb itself, in the poem The Lamb, while there are 2 stanzas, but there is no symmetrical feature between the 2 stanzas, because the second stanza builds its own symmetry away from the first stanza, while the first stanza goes as ends in AA, BB, CC, DD, and AA. The second stanza, in which there are 10 lines, it is as if each 5 lines is facing the other in a mirror. It's AA, EF, GG, FE, and AA, as if each 5 line is facing the other in a mirror image, creating thus its own symmetrical vision. Okay, so thank you, Ines. Next slide, please. Yeah, the use of language also is a side of unnoticed asymmetry because Blake opts for both archaic and pure English in his poems and abides by the rule of none. For example, he opts for archaic, but he doesn't abide by the rule of the archaic grammar, in which, for example, with the pronouns such as thou, thee, thy, normally the verb takes a T or ST at the end, but this is not respected. It's respected just in one line, which is, dost thou know who made thee? This brings to the foreground Blake's asymmetrical use of language, but also brings about the idea that Blake is not just a creator of composite art, to use W.G.T. Mitchell's words, but also is a creator of a composite language. And this may be explained with reference to the idea that Blake, that in Blake's vision, in Blake's system, he doesn't like to use these barriers. He doesn't like these barriers to hinder the vision in front of people. So it's him who said in Marriage of Heaven and Hell, if the doors of perception are cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is infinite. He crosses the barriers or the borders between the archaic and the pure English so freely to convey his free vision of the words. Okay, Ines, next slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, the meter also in both poems is a site of another unnoticed asymmetrical feature in Blake's these poems mainly. While the couplets that start the lamb that start and the first and the second stanza of the lamb are written in trochaic, which is a meter that uses in which food is composed of stressed and then unstressed syllable. So he starts these couplets in trochaic, but he ends them in spondaic, and spondaic is composed of the food, and spondaic is composed of 2 stressed syllables, like made thee, tell thee. So there is stress, 2 stress. And the rest of the lines in the lamb are set in trochaic tetrameter catalectic. And by catalectic, I mean that the metrical line is shortened at the end with the omission of the syllable. Hence, all the lines in the lamb end in a strong beat. Okay, and this endows the poem and the lamb itself with power, as it ends all the poem ends in strong beats, which creates this asymmetry between the theme of the poem, which is supposed to be about a very innocent and pure and calm lamb, it endows it with strength, as opposed to the Tyger, which is set in trochaic tetrameter, catalectic too, but switches to trochaic in lines 4 in the first and the second stanza, in line 3 and 4 in the third stanza, and in lines 1 and 4 in the fifth stanza, and in the last line of the poem. So we notice that many lines and in weak beats, which of course downplays the power of the poem and the tiger itself, and creates an asymmetry between the theme of the poem and the way Blake chose to write it. Okay, Ines, please, next. Thank you. So all these asymmetries, not asymmetries, I always try to find why Blake has opted for this. And I think that the asymmetries noticed in Blake's companion poems echo the asymmetries in his own society. As we all know, Songs of Innocence and Experience are the site of Blake's criticism of the social, religious, and political ideas and ideals. So he tried to bring about this asymmetry to empower the weak, like the lamb, for example. It's as if Blake is trying to bring about a new world order where he empowers the lamb and he downplays the power of the tiger, to show that the seemingly weak people in society can be more strong-willed than those who look strong, and to show also that the word doesn't need always to be symmetrical to convey one's vision of the word. For these asymmetries can also have their own messages to deliver. Okay, I think the next slide is a thank you, everyone, for all your attention, and I'm ready for discussion. I hope this presentation introduced something for you.